Welcome to the show, Julia. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Thank
excited
you
to be here.
so much for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation. We chatted just for a few minutes before I hit record, and I just know this is going to be great, and it's really going to speak to my audience.
Good.
I always welcome everybody with the same question, which is asking them their background, kind of who they are, what they do, and how they came to do what they do. Because usually the guests on this show have a journey that took them
Yeah.
to where they are. So, I love to hear the journey portion. So
Right.
fill us in on your journey.
Okay. It's a big story, so I'll try to make it a little bit
Okay.
a little bit shorter. But as far as what I'm doing now and who I am now, I am a complete wellness coach. I started out as a health coach and helped a lot of people lose weight because that was part of my journey. And I've actually really broadened my horizons into this wellness idea because I believe that there's more to us than just our nutrition and fitness. And I believe that you have to have complete wellness, which also includes quite a few other things, including your spiritual wellness, your sexual wellness, your financial wellness, in order to really have an understanding and honestly control of your life. Those are all areas in which we can explore and expand and heal, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a practice. That's the other thing. And it's little bits at a time. And I believe very strongly that they all affect each other. So a healing in one area will allow or actually be healing in another,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all connected. But you got to be willing and open to doing that kind of work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do now. I also host my podcast, which we'll talk about later, and that's huge, so much fun.
Yes, it
and,
is so
and
much fun, isn't
it's
it?
so much fun.
It's so much fun. I know.
And it's actually been super, like, I've learned so much. Every time I tell my story, I learn something else about, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like I'll put
Yes.
different pieces together, or like in talking to other women, like it's just phenomenal how everybody else's journey can, like, is just like, or their perspective about
Mhm.
even my journey, like, is just
Yeah.
like, wow, like I've never thought of it that way. And it's been super, it's been really cool. And it's just awesome to meet women, like-minded women who just want to
Yeah.
help other women. And it's just like,
Yes.
this is so cool. I'm so excited to be a part of this community.
Yeah, it's
So,
amazing. I mean, it's amazing to like hear all the different stories and how
yeah.
on the outside the stories seem so different, but on the inside they're like really so much the same. And
Yeah.
yes, and learning from other people's perspectives. And usually on my show's about an hour. So I sit and I talk with someone one-on-one about
Yeah.
pretty deep stuff for about an hour. And
Right.
at the end, you're like, oh my God, you're my new friend. Like, I
No,
love you.
totally.
I love you so
Let's keep in touch. Yeah,
much.
totally. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's been amazing and wonderful. And
Good.
yeah, and I started the show because I wanted to help other women. But yes, along the way, like you're saying, like I feel like I'm learning even more about myself
100%.
through the
Absolutely.
process. So
I,
it's
a long
wonderful.
time ago, I used to teach dance, and we used to say that, like, teaching is learning twice. And like, I
Yeah.
really feel like that's true of telling my story and like
Yeah.
helping other people. It's like, okay, I need to apply that to my life more, or
Yeah.
in a different way, or in that way, or this
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
it's really exciting,
It
when you're
is.
open to that kind of healing and learning, and like where you're like, oh, and like you can, like I said, like put
Yeah.
little puzzle pieces to like fill in the
Yes.
blanks that you'd never thought of before. It's
Yeah.
really, it's fun. and
It
and you,
really
so
is.
often we associate like healing and growth with like pain, and it's heavy, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It can be light. And I think
Yeah.
that that's one of the things I've really been talking a lot about lately, is like approaching this stuff that, first of all, I don't believe in judgment. Like, any, like, go eat an entire cake, I'm not going to judge you for it, you know what I mean? We
Yes.
might talk about how it made you feel, but
Right.
but I'm not going to judge you for it, because I want you to be curious about why that happened. Let's get
Mhm.
curious, and not from a like, why the hell did you do that, but from a like, huh, what led you to make that choice?
Yeah.
Let's look at that. Where did that come from? What,
Mhm.
and I do it to myself, and it makes, I'm a vocabulary person, just FYI. It makes this journey easier. And I don't mean simple. I mean, you can approach it with ease
Mm.
when you approach it with curiosity, and
Yes.
kind of a like, wow, I made that choice. Okay, done. Don't have to worry about it. But where did that come from?
Right.
Do I believe that? Did I need that? What, and so
Yeah.
we can really break stuff down from that much more elevated place
Yeah.
than when we're
Absolutely.
in it and hating ourselves for whatever happened.
Yes.
That's
The
going to
guilt
get you
shame
nowhere.
spiral. There, nothing good comes from that.
No, it's like, do you remember the never ending story? I'm totally
Yes, I
dating
used
myself.
to. No,
It's
I
the
me too. I
swamp
love
of
that.
despair. Guilt and should are the swamp of despair.
Yes.
You're going to kill your
Yes.
horse if you go in there.
Yeah, I don't even remember that. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. I literally, it's
Oh,
so funny. My son is 10, and I was like, have you ever seen the never ending story? Because if you haven't, we have to watch that.
that's,
I
yeah, it's
died.
perfect age, right? Yeah.
Yes,
No,
yes.
but that's the saddest part of the whole movie is when he's leading his horse through this swamp and his horse gives up
Yes, I
and
do remember
gives in to
that
the despair.
vaguely, but yes, I don't
Yeah.
remember that piece around it. Oh, now I definitely have to go
Yeah.
back and watch
Yeah. So
it.
anyway, but how I got here, it's been a
Mhm,
while. And like I said, it's a practice. I don't believe it's called a journey because you keep going. Like it's
mhm.
not over. I'm not done. I got a long way to go.
Yeah.
But about a little over 3 years ago, so it was June of 2020 was when I actually started my transformation. But so it was just after the start of COVID. We were quarantined here in New York March 15th, and that was my last day at work. And I was close to 300 pounds. I'm 5'8", so that's a lot. And I'd struggled with weight the majority of my life. But I was at a point where I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. I um, escaped myself. I know this now in my work. I didn't want to
Mhm.
be home alone. I didn't like myself at all. So I didn't
Mhm.
want to spend any time with myself. And I would literally stay at work and not work because at least I wasn't home by myself.
Mhm.
And yeah. And so I was losing friendships because my mom and my brother and I have a very tight relationship. We're a very tight knit little group of little family. And there was a lot of strain between us because I would be hours late to a family function
Mhm.
because I would just always be at work.
Yeah.
And I was miserable. I hated myself. And I'd go to a friend's house if I had a friend and
Mhm.
like meet their friends. And as long as we were talking about theater, I was in the theater industry. As long as we were talking about theater, I could carry on a conversation. But the minute that conversation changed, I had nothing to offer. And I'd leave
Mhm.
those parties going, what is wrong with me? Like I have a good personality. Like people like me. I'm fun and funny. And none of that is coming through.
Yeah.
What's going on? And I started to really feel like a shell of a person because all I
Mhm.
did was work.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation. There were a couple of them, but there was one night in particular where I was like, if this is my purpose, if this is why I'm here to do this job, I'm out. I don't want any
Wow.
part of it. I'm good. And I don't
Mhm.
see anything else. So I'm good. And my friend was like, no, 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 no. Like, let's take this back and like,
Right. Right.
let's think this through. And I was
Right.
like, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
And the only thing that kept me from following through on that was that I knew it would absolutely tear apart my mom and my brother. There was
Mhm.
no way I could let her find me. And then I literally remember thinking like, how could I make sure that my brother was the one that found me? And then it was like, I don't want to do that to him either. But like, so how could I? And so I had that conversation. And the next morning, my coach called me and she was like, do you want to do this program? And it's a weight loss program. And I was like, no, because I had decided there are a lot of happy people who are 300 pounds. I don't
Yeah.
need the weight loss. I need the happiness.
Right.
And I was like, I'm good. But I had done this program 3 or 4 years prior and had success with it. I think I lost like 25 pounds, whatever. But I remember more than anything, I had this like fog lifted. I had this mental clarity. And it was the first diet I'd been on that like provided that for me. And I was like, what is this about? And then I got busy and let it go and gained the weight back and blah, blah, blah. And here we are. And so when she said, do you want to do this? I said, no. And then I was
Mhm.
about to hang up and I was like, actually, wait, because I remembered that mental clarity and I knew that's what I needed. I needed the
Mm.
mental work. My friend was like, let's do some yoga, let's do some meditation. And I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously therapy, but like I was not open to that at
Yeah.
all because I was
Yeah.
done. I didn't want to
Mhm.
help myself.
Mhm.
Um, but I remembered that mental clarity and I said yes. And then like I didn't start right away. It took me another month before I actually started. And she's like, are you going to do this? And I was like, I don't want to. Anyway, fast forward, I started it. And I remember I incorporated yoga into this program. And so like within 2 weeks, that mental clarity was back. And I started to like be like, huh, okay, I can function now. Like I don't feel like I want to kill myself anymore. And I don't feel like, I'd lost some weight by that point. And I remember, okay, it's time for me to start the yoga. I really wanted to get into that for, like I said, the mental practice. And I did my first 30-minute at home thing. And I'd done yoga before. I used to dance, like I said, so I'm flexible, all this stuff. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I remember at the end of the 30 minutes laying on the floor, flat on my face, crying and absolutely hating myself again. Like, you're fat, you're ugly, like, you can't do this. What made you think you could be here? All of these things. That was terrible. You've never been blah, blah, blah. And literally, Katie, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was on a balance beam where all of that was where I was used to living. Like, that's how I spoke to myself, like, day in and day out. And on the other side of it, there was this like, but wait, you haven't left the house for 3 months. You usually walk a mile and a half every day just getting to and from the subway. You haven't done that for 3 months. You're 300 pounds. You're like all this stuff. Like, what makes you haven't done yoga in 20 years? What makes you think that it's going to be perfect this first time? You're losing weight. You're doing this for your mental health. Try it again tomorrow. It'll be better. And I chose that. For the first time in my life, I chose that voice. And then I chose it again the next day and the next day. And obviously it got better and better. And then there was a lot more learning and a lot more dismantling of all of the 45 plus years of narratives that I've built up about how awful I am, till all of a sudden now 10 months later, I've lost 130 pounds. I've gone from a size 22 to a size 4, and I look and feel pretty damn incredible. But I will be honest with you, I would give it all back if it meant that I had to, like, if I could keep how I feel about myself. And I want to be very clear. I don't feel amazing about myself because I lost weight. Absolutely, that's amazing. And I'm not going to I don't want to trade that.
Right.
But I feel amazing because I realized, because I did the work and I understand now that I have value, that I am enough today, exactly how I am and who I am. And if somebody leaves my life, it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them, because I am enough. I don't have to prove my friendship. I don't have to stay till midnight or 2 a.m. at work in order to prove that I'm a good employee. I'm enough. You can't put a price on that.
No, you can't. You can't. And there's so many, on this show previously, before we started recording, we were talking about how my audience is a lot of moms, and you were saying, well, I'm not a mom, but a lot of these things are relatable no matter who you are and what you do. And we've talked a lot about how moms, the self-sacrificing that goes on in the motherhood community, and how, we do on the outside, we're doing that because it thinks it makes us a good mom or a good partner or whatever. But a lot of times it's about, underneath of that, it's about not believing that you are enough and trying to prove your worth.
Absolutely. I actually was talking to a group of moms yesterday in a thing that I was doing, and there's these perfectionism type of standards of I have to do this because I have to be a good mom. If I don't do this, I'm not going to be a good mom. And there's this mysterious good mom thing that you're always trying to reach towards. And I challenge that. Again, I'm not a mom, but I think that this is true for women in general, and different, I realize, but in general, you are going to be a better mom. You are going to be able to show up better if you are present for yourself first. And I did a different podcast with another mom centric podcast. I start with 3 minutes. 3 minutes in the morning. Just give yourself 3 minutes. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes to develop a practice, to develop 3 minutes. And if you can't find 3 minutes, okay, cool. Let's work on that. Let's work towards 3 minutes. Let's take a deep breath while we're driving. Let's take a deep breath with your kids. Look, it's a red light. 3 deep breaths, everybody. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you can find room, but when you can give yourself that time to just sit and be present with yourself, 3 minutes, and it'll change your life. You won't feel a difference that day. You won't feel a difference the next day. Give it a week, give it 2. So I have a little morning practice that I do that starts with 3 minutes, moves up to 7 to 10 or more if you want. And if you have the time, fantastic. But if you don't, no worries. I get it. But what that does is it starts your morning off in the best possible way so that you are connected to yourself, you feel present for yourself, and then you're more able to be present for everyone else in your life. And you're not starting the morning groggy and therefore grumpy, and therefore everything expands on that instead of feeling calm, centered, and everything can expand on that. You won't be as reactive because you'll be more aware and because of all those things. But I say that everything is a practice. So that breathing practice, that breath work, that neck stretches, that's a practice that then carries on into the rest of your day. And the more you practice it, the more it expands, and the more you become aware, and the more you'll find the more room you have for the, I don't know if you curse on this, but for the BS,
It's
you
fine.
know, like, because it doesn't affect you anymore, because there's distance between you taking up, think about like the air that you inhale, like that takes up space. And therefore that gives you space between you and whatever's going on in front of you. Take a breath.
Absolutely. There's so much you said that I want to like go back and like pick out certain pieces. So one thing that's just really like little but funny is that you were talking about the never ending story, and then you were talking about how this is a journey, and that's why we call it a journey, but it is the never ending story.
It is.
Your life is the never ending story. It is the never ending story of, if you choose, continually growing and evolving and finding more of what I call the magic, like the magic in life, the part of life when you were like, if this is it, like, I don't really need to be here for this. And I've had moments in my life like that as well. I have a chronic pain condition, and there was a period where I was like, if this is it, I'm out. Like, I'm done. But I have 2 children, and that was really my motivation to say I can't be done. But
isn't it funny for both of us in that situation? I didn't choose life for me. I still put someone else before me. And I'm super grateful I did in that situation. But like, isn't that interesting? That is always our go-to, is what we need to be or do for the people in our lives. What about me?
Right.
And so I'm so grateful for that girl who, even though her priorities may have been a little bit skewed and she did it for somebody else, I'm so grateful she did, because she persevered and she did it anyway. And she ended up choosing herself, even though she didn't know she was doing that at the time.
Right. Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank God for that. And I've heard so many women even say, not to that extreme where they're like, I, don't think I want to be here anymore. But I've heard a lot of women say, like, is this it? They get to that point, they're in their careers, they have their children, they're married, they have the home, they have the whatever, blah, blah. And they're like, is this it? Because if this is it, like, not that they're thinking that they want to harm themselves or anything like that, but they just feel unfulfilled. They feel like they're unfulfilled. There's no magic. There's no passion. It's a never ending to-do list. It's constant chores. It's just like, what is the point of all this? And that's another, question I've heard women say a lot. Like, what is the point of all this?
Right.
And you can see how they feel that way when you've constantly put yourself on the back burner and you're no longer engaging in the things that really light you up inside.
Right. Well, and I think that there's a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, like, I heard this quote yesterday, and I'm super excited about it. And it's not even a quote. I think somebody just said, like, don't give up your life for your to-do list.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, that's big, because we to-do list all over the place. But I think that, see, and now I lost my train of thought to what I was going to go back to, but this idea of like, is this it? And then my question back to you would be like, is that all you want?
Right.
And I know for me, people would ask me what I wanted, and I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know, because I didn't know who I was. And until we know who we are and what we're made of, and then we can't know what we want.
Right.
So if you are constantly like, I don't know about the basic questions that you haven't, like, that people are like, when it comes to you and the things that you desire, even if it's like what kind of birthday cake you want or where to go to dinner, I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. Well, I want to challenge you to stop saying, I don't know. But here's the thing. You don't have to answer right away. A friend of mine gave me permission to wait and say, hang on, let me think about that for a second. Even something as silly as that. Let me think about what kind of birthday cake I want. Can I get back to you?
I
you know?
so identify with that because there was a point in my life where it was I couldn't even tell you what kind of birthday cake I wanted. I
No,
mean, I was so
no.
dissociated with myself that I
Mhm.
literally I was the I don't know queen. I
Right.
don't know. I don't
Totally.
know.
So I try not to say it anymore. I've tried to strike it from my vocabulary. And sometimes I'll be like, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you. And I'll because I didn't
Right.
say I don't know.
Right.
but,
Right.
but and a mentor of mine challenged me once because I was like, where does this come from? I was a crying mess. It was one of these big lessons. And she was like, Julia, as a child, it was so important to make sure that everybody around you was good. And so you stopped listening to yourself and to what
Yeah.
you wanted. And that's okay. That's the
Mhm.
other thing. Remember, no judgment. That's
Right.
okay. But you've been practicing that now for all of these years. So we have to practice listening. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things I often tell myself when I'm like connecting to myself in the morning is I'll take a deep breath and on my exhale I'll say I'm listening. And then go to your closet and start here. Remember, start small, keep it
Mhm.
simple. Open your closet and ask yourself out loud, what do I want to wear today?
Yeah.
Not what's there and easy, not what I'm just gonna wear. What do you want to wear?
Mhm.
And like, don't leave your closet till you figure it out.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
don't be
that's
afraid for multiple outfit changes, right? Put it on and you're
absolutely,
like, "Oh no. I
yeah,
thought I wanted that.
this
No,
seems
I don't
fun.
want that."
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, no judgment,
Yeah.
no judgment. But start there. And that seems so silly, but you practice that every day for a few weeks and you'll be able to make bigger decisions and bigger decisions. And it's all a practice.
I love that. I love that. And that's what we talk about on my show a lot because I do a
Yeah.
lot of mindfulness stuff and it's all a practice
Mm-hmm.
and it's just little tiny teeny tiny micro changes and
Yeah.
micro advances every
Yeah.
day that when you look back over time, you'd be like, wow, I actually have come so far. And it
Yeah.
actually didn't even feel that hard because I
Right.
didn't try to make these huge changes
Right.
all at once.
Right. And I think it's really important too to celebrate that,
Yeah.
to celebrate those little tiny micro changes and the little tiny steps that you're making.
Mhm.
Because I was in a more grandiose version, like you're climbing to the top of the hill. Don't miss the view on the way up.
Right.
The
Right.
view's not only at the top.
Right.
It's beautiful the whole
Yes.
way up.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
enjoy that, celebrate that. You
Yeah.
stumble and you fall. Let's celebrate the fact that we kept going. Oh, it's
Right.
hot and I'm tired, but I kept
Yeah.
going.
Right.
Woohoo! Like
Yeah.
little things. And
Yeah.
because you deserve that.
Yeah.
You would do that for your child. You would
Mhm.
absolutely do that for your child.
Yeah.
You deserve that too.
Yeah.
Now and today. You deserved it then. You deserve it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I had another guest on the show, and she was talking. We were talking about coming back home to ourselves, which is the subheading of my show.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about how when we're children, we kind of have to put away parts of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we are dependent on our parents or whoever's caring for us. And so, we want to please them. We want to make them happy. And it's almost like a survival mechanism. And then,
Yes.
we have our peers and we want to fit in. And that's another survival mechanism. And, these are things that pieces of us that she used the analogy of a backpack. We put them
Yeah.
away in our backpack
Mm-hmm.
and then we're carrying them around. And then all of a sudden we realize how heavy this backpack has
Yep.
become. And we have all these huge holes in ourselves from these pieces of us that we've taken out and put in the
Interesting.
backpack. But you get to a certain age where you have a certain amount of security, a sense of security in yourself that you can start taking the pieces out of the backpack and putting them back into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that analogy because it releases the judgment. Like you're saying, there's no judgment that
Absolutely.
you had to do this when you were a child, that
Mm-hmm.
you had to take care of somebody else or you had to put your needs second or third or fourth or 10th.
Right.
But that there's no judgment about that. That's just what you needed to do for
Yeah.
survival at that time. And
Yeah.
now you don't need to do it anymore and you can make a
Exactly.
different choice.
You can make it, and that's what I was going to say. There's a
Yeah.
couple of things there that like I talk about backpack as well, but a little bit differently, but that's cool. I really like the idea of like the backpack say because of the parts of you that are missing. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I think that I believe very strongly that we are right where we need to be always.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so flippant to say everything happens for a reason or everything happens. I don't think that everything happens for a reason necessarily, but everything happens as it should. And
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully takes off a little bit of pressure that it doesn't have to be right, that there isn't just one way. I grew up in a very strict, structured, organized religion, that there is one way, there is one path, and you get that from your God. And if you stray, you're wrong. And like, don't do that. You have to follow his way, right?
Yeah.
I disagree, because he also gave us free will.
Yeah.
And he, you know what I mean? Like, so like there's a lot in there. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down too crazy of a path, but like, I believe everything happened. I had some pretty crap childhood things. You know what I mean? Like, we all have what I call shitty human moments. I hope that's okay for me to say.
Yes.
Like that, like, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But they lead us to where we are. I love who I am today, and I would not be who I am today if my dad wasn't the complete mess up that he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't be. And so in a
100%.
way, and this is twisted, I'm so grateful he was a jerk, because look where I am,
Yes.
you know?
I
And
know.
so like, that's where the judgment can go away, because
Yeah.
I made a quote unquote bad choice. I made the wrong choice. No, you didn't. You made the choice you needed to make in the moment. And sure, could you have done it different? Sure. But now you know.
Right.
And now you're where you are, and you have this giant lesson that you've learned from this. You'll never make that choice again. You might be more conscious of the choices you make going forward, and make sure that they move you towards your goals instead of keep you where you were, or take you down a weird winding path, you know?
Yeah.
And like, it all is for our good. It is all for our benefit. So we can release it. We cannot have to hold on to any sort of guilt or shame or anything like that.
Yeah.
We can acknowledge that I am right where I'm supposed to be, and right where I need to be for me, and probably for the people around me. And I can move forward.
Yeah.
And the best part about a choice is that I can make another one.
Yeah. I grew up watching Oprah. I watched her like religiously growing up. And I think it was Maya Angelou. She used to quote her all the time and say, when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And I love that quote, because you said, could I have made a different choice? But you couldn't have made a different choice, right? Because that's where you were. And that's the only option that you saw from that vantage point in your life. So
the other thing is that you didn't make a different choice.
Yeah. Right.
So does it matter if it was good or bad or right or wrong or, neat and pretty? No,
no,
it's done.
Yeah. It's over. And regret is a very wasted emotion.
Oh, totally. And then we harbor all this guilt, and I shouldn't have, and here we are. It keeps us stuck. Those kind of emotions, there's no forward movement in them. You can't get out, can't get there from there.
Yeah.
So let's let it go.
Yeah.
So much easier to say than to do. I'm not gonna
yes,
but it's possible. And when you change your perspective about those, and you stop and you pay attention to the words that you're using, and like all the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and the wish I had, or I'm supposed to be, or it's good, or it's bad, or it's right, or it's wrong, or I cheated, or I made a choice. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
I'll make a different one next time. Not a better one. Just a different one.
A different one, because I have a different vantage point now. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
that.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Yes. When you said in the beginning, when you were talking about your story, and you said, I remembered the clarity, like I had done this like weight loss thing, and I remembered the clarity that I had. And then, when it came back around, and I almost said no, but then I remembered that clarity, and I decided I wanted to do it. And then within a couple of weeks, I had more clarity. What do you think it was? Why do you think you had more clarity after, like, I mean, that's a pretty short period of time. And if it was just a diet, you weren't doing all these other things along with it. What do you think brought that clarity?
So the program is very specific about the first habit that you learn is to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So you eat 6 times a day, very small meals. And then you carry that through. That's a habit that I still, use today, even though I'm not in weight loss. And I know that there's other ways of eating. There are, people intermittent fast and have amazing success, and that's fantastic. I'm not going to say one thing is the way to go. I will always adhere to eating every 2 to 3 hours because of what it did for me. It completely changed my body. It is scientifically proven to regulate your system. It's what a lot of diabetics are encouraged, or how a lot of diabetics are encouraged to eat, because what it does is it regulates your system. It's not about metabolism. It's about about the fact that because you're eating more frequently, you don't have those big spikes and drops. It actually regulates it and keeps it more of a like an even like wave kind of flow. It does that for your insulin. It does it for your hormones. I have PCOS. Do you know what that is?
I do.
And so I I have never had a regular menstrual cycle my entire life since I got it at 12 or 13. And I'd go years without it. And they never understood. They'd try to regulate me on birth control. It would last a couple of months and then go away, and they didn't understand, blah, blah, blah. I started this program, and probably 2 months in, I've been like clockwork ever since. For 3 years, I've had a regular period.
Wow.
And I can only attribute that to this kind of eating. And then additional to all of the hormones and all the chemicals in your body, it does the same thing for your brain. Like it just, you just have more space almost like you. And again, I think that's what I mostly attribute that to, or at least that starting point. But then the more conscious you are, that provides you more space too. And what I mean by conscious, I don't mean like any sort of like woo-woo enlightenment thing. I actually really mean taking a second to weigh the options of your choices. That's making a conscious choice, whether that's about whether or not you're going to have pasta or like zoodles, or if you're like, you know what I mean? Or if you're going to eat the bun of the hamburger you're ordering, or just eat the meat and the, lettuce or whatever, like something as simple as that, that's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And we so easily just eat whatever, like, so when you start making more conscious choices, that gives you more space here also. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I think it's a combination of the two, but I attribute the large part of it to that way of eating. And that's why it happens so quickly, because it takes about 4 days for all the crap to leave your body. And then you start having more energy. And then as you continue doing the like actual physiological changes happen.
Okay. That's fascinating. I have always eaten every 2 to 3 hours intuitively. And I've always had a little like, why do I need to eat so much?
It's not that you're eating a lot. It's just that you're eating often, and you eat smaller meals, I'm sure. And like the other thing is that we feed infants every 2 to 3 hours. Why, when we introduce solid food, do we change that? And I'm very, very passionately minded that we don't need to, and we quote unquote shouldn't,
Right. All
but
the
it's what we
shoulds.
do. Exactly. And the other thing about like just diets in general, like I said, I don't know if I just said this to you before we started or not, but like, it's not about just being on a diet. Like I really want to, I really want to change people's minds about that word even. Like, let's let go of the diet mentality. Let's break up that societal opinion about being on a diet. You don't need to be on a diet. You need to make changes in you need to change. I don't like saying people need to do anything either. I would recommend changing your relationship with food. I would look at why you're eating. Like, and there is so much societal pressure and like structure and rules. Name a rom-com where a woman gets broken up with and doesn't eat a pint of ice cream.
Right.
We are trained to do that.
Yeah.
That is what our society expects. As women, we're trained to eat chocolate once a month. No, you don't. Do you really want chocolate, or is it just what you're used to doing? You know what I mean? And so that's where we start getting curious about what we're doing. And that's where you can affect change in your life. And that's what I mean by like, when you want to make real change, then it's all connected, and like you start to be more conscious, and you start to like ask yourself those questions, and that's how it's all connected, and that's how you can really affect change. If you're just going to do a diet so that you can fit into a dress, good for you. I'm not going to judge you for it. Have a great time. But if you really want to make change, it's a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that is boundary setting. Wouldn't you agree? Like setting boundaries with not just the people in your life. I mean, yes, that it could be the people in your life, but also about what you're willing to do and not willing to do, or setting boundaries around time that's just yours. Like, how do you help women set those boundaries? It seems very hard. It seems like women have a very hard time setting boundaries.
I agree. And I think what happens, it's so funny. I just had an amazing interview with a woman named Allison McIntosh. I would follow her anywhere. Like she has such a different perspective of boundaries. It's actually made me question like how I talk about boundaries, because it was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I've never heard anybody say that before.
Mind blown.
But, you know, and then also, like, as far as it being hard, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she actually specifically clarified a boundary with a friend of hers. And like, I think there was a level of expecting there to be a reaction, and then there wasn't a reaction. And so then that was assumed to be the reaction. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they must be mad at me because they haven't really talked to me since then. And they've been here so many times and they didn't call me, which was kind of the boundary. And I was like, do you really think they're mad, or are they honoring your boundary? And she was like, oh, you know what I mean? And so it's so funny because we are so good at creating stories for ourselves and filling in the blanks that we have no clue about.
Yeah.
So back to boundaries though, and this actually kind of incorporates what Allison was talking about, is that we talk about boundaries and thinking that it is something we have to put in place for somebody else.
Mhm.
And actually, when you look at the definition of a boundary, or what a boundary actually is it's almost like putting fences up around your property.
Mhm.
And if my body and my soul and my me is my property, then I'm putting boundaries up for me, not for anybody else.
Yeah.
And so if we can change our perspective a little bit and start to find out who we are and do the inner work. This is what Allison was talking about, is like, if you are putting a boundary like a rubber band around something that doesn't have any substance, it's going to cave in. So your boundaries aren't going to stick.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing there to hold them up.
Yeah.
So the more we do, that's what she said, that I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. and like, so I've thought about it in the last week or two, like, to like really think about this. And it's true, because like the more work we do on ourselves, the more we understand who we are and what we want, then the more we understand who we're willing to be for the people in our lives and who we expect them to be in return. And there's your boundary. Like, I didn't have to say or do anything. I just have to be who I want to be for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's my boundary.
It's a resonance, right? I mean, it's a energy field. Like, once you fully come into yourself and feel very authentically yourself, very aligned with your belief system and what's important to you, you have a certain energetic. Those people who are living in that space have a certain energetic, and you don't need to say anything.
No.
It's
no.
I don't even know how to explain it. It just felt.
It's absolutely. And I think that that's the thing to remember, is, and that as we are sort of like, quote unquote, working on our boundaries, it's actually staying true to that self. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, yes.
I will tell you that I struggle with boundaries because I put something in place and like, this is how I feel about this situation. But then my friend will be like, yeah, but I have to do blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, okay. And it's like, wait, Julia, you just caved in on your boundary. You know what I mean? Like, you just essentially put them before you and the things that you want for yourself and for this relationship. And so it's like, I feel like boundary has so much less to do with the people around us and so much to do with ourselves. And I think something that is interesting that we can kind of get confused about boundaries is that, like, as we start to do this and we start to come into who we are and realize what we are, for lack of better words, willing to tolerate from the people in our lives, and willing to like, actually, that's where I'm going to draw the line. I deserve more respect, or different, or better, whatever, whatever that is. I think what happens is, a friend of mine and I talk about it kind of like a video game. You do this work and you like go through these battles and you like heal and you learn and you grow, and it's like little battles along the video game, and then there's like this big menacing dude at the end, and you conquer him and you level up, right?
My son would love this analogy. Okay, go ahead.
But you level up. But here's the thing, all of a sudden, whoo, I got through it. This was amazing. It was hard, but look at where I am. I feel so good. I'm in such a better, different place. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I leveled up, and now I'm in a new land. There's new characters. Don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Where's everybody else? And then everybody else comes along and you're like, hey, not to say that you're better than them, but you're like looking down at them a little bit. Not like, again, not in a negative way, but like they didn't level up.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yes.
So sometimes we evolve kind of like past our friend group,
Mhm.
or, and
Yeah.
sometimes people evolve with us separately and we grow together in our own
Yeah.
ways, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's
Mhm.
okay too. And so that's where it's okay to keep going in your journey, even though it feels like you're leaving other people behind. And
Yeah.
that's hard and it hurts, but it's okay.
It's true. It is. I completely understand what you're talking about and have experienced it in my
Yeah.
own life. And some people are meant to be in your world forever and some people aren't. They're in your life for a period of time and you
Yeah.
learn from them and then it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's
Right.
it's just part of life, but it
Yeah.
can be painful. You
It can
understand that it
be.
can be painful.
Yeah.
And we also have talked on the show about, when you have a partner and you're doing the work and maybe your partner's not, and then how that impacts the
Yeah.
relationship because no
Yeah.
one, it's scary. It's scary to be on this path and feel like maybe your partner's not, and then worry that
Right.
at some point you and your partner will not be in the same place.
Right. Right.
But if you deny yourself and you don't
Right.
do the work, even though your soul is calling for it, that relationship will be no good anyway,
Right.
because
Exactly.
you will not be in alignment. You will not be your best self. And you will not,
Right.
when you don't feel good about yourself and where you are, you really can't, it's impossible to have
No,
good relationships. It all begins with the
absolutely.
relationship with yourself.
And I think, I know it won't solve everything. I know that, but like there's something massive to be said about communication, and
Oh,
to be able
yes.
to say, this is where I am now. And in these ways, this is how I've grown. And to be able to try to open that conversation, and even like, I would encourage you to look at yourself and like, not that you need to change or anything like that, but like,
Mhm.
no, none of us need to be fixed. We just need to continue to move forward in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that's what I'm doing, and this is, and so I'm no longer willing to, I had a friend who would like make fun of me and put me down, and because I already believed those things about myself, I would laugh and we would have a good time. Well, all of a sudden, I don't hate myself anymore. I don't think that stuff's funny. And so I
Yeah.
stopped laughing and
Yeah.
found and was like, "What?" And like putting that into question, and it was like, "Julia, you've changed. You would have laughed at that before." And I was like, do you realize how it's not funny? How it's
Mhm.
actually just that you're insulting me? And it was like, oh, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
they had no
Yeah.
clue because it was just what we had established
Yes.
as okay for our relationship at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so, like, sometimes they'll go, oh, you're right. And then they'll evolve a little bit. Or
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
they'll be like, no, that's BS. You've changed. You're walking away from this, blah, blah, blah. And that's okay. We need to
Yeah.
normalize that it's okay for friendships to end. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they're a failure. It means that they were a great success while they were happening.
Right.
They're not
Right.
failing.
Yes.
They've just run their course. And
Yes.
that's okay.
Mhm. And sometimes they
Totally
were a
okay.
mirror, right? So that she was a
Yeah.
mirror for you in that moment
Oh,
of
totally.
what, whoa, I now see the dynamic of this relationship
Right.
and why I was laughing at those things, even
Right.
though you, I'm sure they really weren't even funny in
No,
the
they weren't.
moment, but you were
No.
you were just kind of going along to get along. And
Right.
now you had evolved so far that you're like, oh, whoa, look at this.
Yeah.
Look at
Not
what I was
okay.
consenting to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I no longer consent.
Nope.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay because she helped you grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're worth it.
Mhm.
You're worth it. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like, just remember that.
Yeah.
Like, it's good.
How do you help women? You talked about that too, and you said um, you had done the yoga the first
Mhm.
day, and you were like, "This was horrible, and I can't do this," and then like all this negative self talk started coming in, and then all of a sudden you flipped the switch and you
Mhm.
started being more encouraging and positive towards yourself. And I think that negative self talk goes on a lot for a lot of
Mhm.
women out there.
Mhm.
How do they get out of it? How do they start flipping that switch themselves?
By starting a breath practice.
Well,
I mean,
I
honestly.
love me some breath work. So you're speaking my language.
No, like seriously, that 3 minutes in the morning that I was talking about,
Yeah.
because again, that is awareness. Like all I want you to think about in those 3 moments is, how's your body moving? Where's the air hitting you? Like seriously, like those are questions to ask, and you are all of a sudden paying attention to what's going on in your body. And whether you know it or not, you carry that with you through the day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're gonna like be outside one day and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful day. That tree is gorgeous and I've never noticed it It's in my name. It's down the block and I've never seen it before. And like, that's a bright color. I think that's my favorite color. Like all of a sudden you're going to be more aware of the ridiculous things around you. And the more you do that, the more all of a sudden you're aware of the words that you're using and the way you're speaking to yourself. It's kind of hard to say, like if you put your hands flat on your lap and you tell yourself consciously move your arm, that's really hard to like make happen. It's one of those things that we do without thinking. And the same thing is true about how we talk to ourselves. Again, we've got 48 years of practicing hating myself or, speaking negatively to myself. So to just say, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin? And so like, that's why developing your awareness is key.
Yeah.
But then what I would recommend doing is keying into certain words. Should is a big word for me. And that's one of the things that I do my best with clients to take off of the table completely. Like, let's stop saying that. And there's a whole process to how to make that should, which is a stagnant, dead in the water word, to becoming an action word and deciding, do I want that or don't I want that, and moving forward. So words that I hear my clients using more often than not: cheat, good or bad, right or wrong. Should is the biggest one, I think. And worry is one. And then lazy, like things like that.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that. And like, if I bring that, like that one word, I want you to count how many times you say that word to yourself this week. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's the word. That's the word. And so that is like kind of like the little like foot in the door of I'm paying attention to what I'm saying to myself. And then you start hearing full sentences and not just the word lazy.
Right.
And you start, and then like, because I used to do this thing where I'd be running late. I'm a late person. I'm often late.
So am I.
So you understand.
I do.
My friend Shannon's
it's a problem.
like, you're always late. Why don't you give yourself extra time? I was like, I did.
I'm
still late. So, but like, I would find myself texting to my friends, like, I'm the worst. I'm so sorry. I'm da da da. And it was like, and I remember the day where I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just late.
Right.
Yes, I'm not the worst. Lots of people are late. Like, and I erased it and I like tried to come up with it, and I still catch myself. Literally on a podcast the other day, I said something about being an idiot, and I was like, no, I'm not an idiot. Like right there live, I took it back because it's like, it's not true. I believe very strongly that the words I am are the two most powerful words in the English language, because we say I'm lazy and our bodies go cool. And they're going to make that happen. The universe goes, okay, cool. That's what she wants.
Right.
I'm an idiot. Okay, let's make that true. How many times have you told yourself in the morning because you dropped something, I'm clumsy today? And then you were clumsy for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
The I am is so powerful. And so even just listen to that. How many times do you call yourself something? That's a bigger open door. That's not just a word. But so those two things combined, the breath practice and pay attention, find one word and count how many times you use it. You won't be able to count. And that's okay. That's not the point, right?
Yeah.
It's bringing your attention to it. And starting, and honestly, here we go. That's what it comes down to. Start.
Yes.
Start. You want to learn how to walk in heels? Here, I'm a pro. I can walk in heels anywhere, but here's the trick. Put on your heels, walk. That's it. How do you learn how to walk in heels? You walk in heels.
Right.
How do you learn it's just one of those things that you just have to start.
Yeah. I love that, choosing one word, because I mean, what you're talking about is building awareness, which before we started recording, we were talking about awareness and how awareness is the key to everything. It's the key to all change. It's the key to growth. It's the key to freedom. It's the key to living in your purpose, like, and passion. Like it is the key is awareness, and
it's the key to getting curious, which then opens every single door imaginable.
Yes. Curiosity without judgment,
100%.
We talk about in meditation a lot. And again, it's kind of like the same thing, the way you're describing it. Like when I teach people to meditate, I say, you're going to have tons of thoughts going through your head. Like have zero expectation that you're going to close your eyes and then your mind is going to be blank. Like that is not going to happen ever in your life. If you do this till you die, that is not going to happen.
I've started telling people that I'm glad that their mind is wandering. Because it means that their brain is functioning properly, because that's what your brain is designed to do.
Yes. Oh,
You know
I
what
say
I
all the
mean?
time, like,
Good.
would you tell your heart to stop beating? Would you tell
Exactly.
your lungs to stop breathing? No, like that
Yeah.
is what it
Yep.
has evolved to do. It's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But every time that you go, let's say this particular practice, you've decided you're focusing on your breath. Every time you're like, oh, I'm not counting my breath anymore. I'm thinking about that argument I had 2 days ago. Okay, coming back to my breath. Oh, not in the breath again. Now I'm thinking about that errand I need to run later. Bring it back to the breath. That's a win. That is every time you do that. If you do that 500 times in a 10-minute meditation, you won. You won.
Yeah, I always say that, like, I always say that it's a practice. You've heard me say that 8,000 times so far in the last hour. But like, if you catch yourself, like, let's pretend that you react and you send a scathing email back, and then you push send and you sit back and you go, wow, I just reacted. Congratulations.
Yes.
Because there have been how many emails sent that you didn't realize you reacted?
Yes.
Great. Like, I caught myself before I sent that text about how awful I was, but how many of those texts have I sent without giving it a thought? The fact that you thought about it and you became aware of it after the fact, yeah, sure, it was after the fact, but you
became aware
there. Let's celebrate that. Like, that's literally the little tiny steps, and it will get better and better and better. But the fact that you thought of it is freaking brilliant, you know? Like, that's progress. That's massive progress.
Yes, because that could turn into such a spiral that you could be in that spiral for days.
Totally.
But you took that moment. Yeah. Oh, it's massive progress.
Totally.
Massive.
Totally.
Love it.
I like when I'm meditating, if my mind's wandering, like I'm thinking about a situation or a person or something like that, I like to, like, just put them in a little bubble and, like, tie a little string and be like, cool, I'll catch you later. Like, and send them off. You know what I mean? So, like, it's still tied to me, so I won't forget this, but not right now. This is my time. This is my time. Thank you. This is my time. Thank you. My time.
And you learn a lot about yourself when you do it too, because like I tend to be a future person. So almost always when I catch myself in a thought, it's something about the future, something I have to get done or whatever the case may be. But some people are past people and they live primarily in the past. So I'm usually like a task oriented person. So if I'm thinking about something, a lot of times it has to do with something I have to get done. Some people are emotion people and they find that they're like, but this is what you get to know about yourself, right? It's that curiosity. You get to know, like, when my brain's on autopilot, where do I go? What do I start saying to myself? What do I start thinking about? Am I in the past? Am I in the future? Am I in a certain emotion? Am I self-blaming and judging and hating? Am I am I judging somebody else? Like, what happens when that crazy neighbor upstairs just goes rogue and I'm not paying attention? And you gain so much awareness about yourself just in that process, which is
what
huge.
it's all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
It was such a lovely conversation. I could talk to you for hours. I want to know more about your story. Before we end, where can everybody find you?
Sure. So my podcast is Life After Breath, and it's on all the major podcast platforms. And then you can find me at Julia Christine Health on Instagram and Julia Christine on Facebook. I do have a Facebook group for the podcast. It's like a podcast community. So Life After Breath podcast community on Facebook. And that's me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I will put all of that in the show notes. So nobody has to remember that. They can click and find you.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. Bye.